Um, and first of all, I did want to start by asking
Mm.
about this opportunity today to be here at Westminster College. Talk about why you are here and what that'll be about.
Well, I'm really thrilled. The Westminster College president, the dean of the business school, and by the way, I might add, with the support of Wells Fargo, who funds their speakers program, had invited me in to do a leadership lecture tonight around 7:30. But also, I'm going to be able to talk to their honors political science students this morning, and this afternoon I'll have a chance to talk about national security with ROTC students from all over the state of Utah. So it's really been an enjoyable opportunity for me to connect with these brilliant young kids at Westminster College.
And I like it seems like you will be reaching different groups and those different aspects of our security, the political side, the ROTC side. That's a great opportunity for them to hear from you, I would believe.
Yeah, and indeed, I like the way they structured it too. Westminster College have the honor students. It won't be a specified lecture. They're just going to really introduce me, and we'll have an open forum and exchange of ideas and viewpoints. It'll be a lot of fun for me in particular to hear what bright young college students think about the issues of the day.
For sure. And speaking of national security and that topic that'll be discussed today, one of the questions that we had, one of the top ones that we had was, we hear so much about Iraq and Afghanistan, but where is the war on terror being fought today, and what is the focus in our strategy?
Well, that's a good question. First of all, I think every year at 9/11, we ask ourselves, are we safer today than we were when that dreadful incident that murdered 3,000 of our citizens took place? And the answer is, of course, we're safer today. We've made immense investments in homeland security, in border control, and protecting the American people from potential threats by bioterrorism or cyber terrorism. And in addition, we've taken 57,000 plus killed and wounded in the U.S. Armed Forces directly confronting terrorist organizations in Iraq, Afghanistan, and elsewhere. So I think the bottom line is we're actually a lot better off than many would suppose. Now, having said that, it's a continuing issue. Clearly there's an ongoing threat from both domestic terrorist threats, and by the way, they're not all Islamic jihadists. There's enough nutcakes floating around out there in the American society from the far left and the far right, and criminal organizations, drug cartels based out of Mexico. So the threats to our security are no longer a single monolithic conventional power. But I think we're, on balance, the American people are pretty well safe today.
Should we be concerned, or how concerned should we be about the things happening in North Korea?
Well, I think on a given day, that's the most likely place on the face of the earth for a tragedy to unfold. We don't understand a lot about how they make their internal decisions. We know that the young fellow who's in there now is untested, and he probably is concerned about whether the North Korean military will follow his instructions. They do have nuclear devices, somewhere between 3 and 8 of them. They've developed a missile technology that increasingly becomes a day-to-day threat to the Japanese, to the South Koreans. And clearly, within 10 years, they'll have a capacity to threaten the mainland United States. So I think it's worth being concerned about. And indeed, in the next 30 days, will this North Korean regime confront the new president of South Korea? And what will the upshot of it be? So it's a situation of great peril. Look, if the North Koreans actually conducted conventional military operations against the South or attacked U.S. armed forces or Japan, there'd be a 6 months to 2 year campaign that would utterly destroy the North Korean armed forces. That's not a question of whether we could do that. The problem would be there'd be an ongoing tragedy of immense proportions from the first hour of the war. Seoul, this sophisticated, modern, giant city, would be under artillery attack in the first hour of the war. So no one wants to precipitate a crisis, but we're right on the edge of one constantly.
Are our recent budget cuts to defense going to put us more at risk?
Well, I think this is going to be an issue. The sequestration process Congress's role in the budget process is shameful. It's illogical. There's no medium-sized business here in Salt Lake that would dream of conducting their own affairs in such a haphazard manner. Now, having said that, I think the other side of the question is you look out over the coming 15 years, somehow we've got to have common sense budgets where Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid are, sustainable. Who's going to pay for them? And the Congress can't seem to grapple with that. Well, the national security got caught in the middle of it. I personally believe we can make huge savings in national security simply by coming out of Afghanistan safely. I mean, Iraq was $12 billion a month at the height of the war. Afghanistan today is probably running at $6 billion a month. But you need Congress to think about what's the strategy in the coming 15 years to defend the American people, and then what do we need to do to pay for it? And I don't think they've taken on that responsibility in a very logical manner.
I was interested to listen in. You spoke about leaving Afghanistan safely, speaking to Lori and Scott about that process. And how do you think that's going?
Well, so far so good, but we're really out in the end of the limb there. I tell people Afghanistan may not be the end of the earth, but you can see it from there. We're 870 miles from the ocean and the U.S. Navy. And the principal way you get 100,000 Connex containers filled with valuable U.S. military equipment in or out of the country is out through Pakistan. And Pakistan, which I might add has 90-plus nuclear weapons, is a tenuous escape route for U.S. equipment or forces. So we've got other alternatives, a so-called northern distribution network, but we're really in a tricky place. And then we've got this ongoing challenge of what to do with President Karzai and the central government. Just yesterday, Secretary Chuck Hagel, a wonderful man, was in Afghanistan meeting with Karzai, and he announces on Women's Day in Afghanistan that he thinks the Americans and the Taliban are in collusion to keep Afghanistan unstabilized so we can stay and take their resources. I mean, after 20,000 killed and wounded, that's what this fellow's come up with. So it's hard to know what we're supposed to do. I think at some point, though, the absolute priority would be get the NATO and the 68,000 U.S. forces out safely.
And I guess my final question would be, with all these concerns, listening to you speak, I start to think about all the different areas of the world where there is this instability and unrest, and I tend to get a little worried. I'm a parent, but then I think about all our amazing men and women in this state, in every state, who are serving our country, and what you said earlier about we are safer today. Is there a note of encouragement you can end us with about continuing on that theme or another theme, and what you'll talk to the youth today at Westminster that can kind of give us some hope for the future?
Well, last night President Levin Stankiewicz had a group together for dinner, and they included the head of the Utah National Guard, wonderful two-star general. And I tell people, I've been in and out of Iraq and Afghanistan for the last 10 years. My son just left Afghanistan a few months back and is retired now. He's an infantry officer, deputy brigade commander in Afghanistan. Never has the country been better served by their armed forces. And by the way, thank God for the National Guard and Reserve components, without whom we would have collapsed. Again, we got 57,000 killed and wounded in the ongoing struggle to protect the American people. And a lot of these units have, the National Guard in the state of Utah, some of them have gone on 6 deployments. So when we wake up in the morning, we got to remember to be grateful for their efforts. And, their grandmothers deploying and, your fellow workers. And there's a real war going on. And you look at some of these Marine infantry battalions, special operations units, Army 10th Mountain Division, a lot of them will have 10, 20% killed and wounded on a given deployment. So I think the country is immensely safer, one can argue, than at most times in our national history. But it's still worth being concerned. Every generation has to step forward and say, how are we going to protect the American people?
Thank you so much for this opportunity. Is there anything, I guess, that I forgot to ask you? Or or that Bob wants to bring up about today, or anything else?
I'm good.
Yeah, that was an excellent interview.
We've been all over the map, I know,
Yep.
with you on
Yep.